We all love Homer and Marge Simpson. Their marriage has weathered nearly 30 years of the most absurd shenanigans and mishap. And despite it all, they've emerged with their love for one another still intact. But at what cost? Let's take a peek into the marriage of Homer and Marge Simpson. Brace yourself, by this video's conclusion, you may not envy their relationship quite as much as you thought you did. But before we ruin everything you've held dear for all these years, go ahead and click on that shiny red subscribe button to stay tuned in to all the latest, greatest content from Screen Rant.
All-Star Boxing is brought to you by Dr. Marvin Monroe's Family Therapy Center.
Huh? What?
Shock therapy. As early as The Simpsons' first season, Homer has demonstrated a surprising lack of tact when it comes to nurturing his marriage. In the fourth episode entitled "There's No Disgrace Like Home," Homer's family behaves badly at a company picnic, drawing the attention of Mr. Burns and embarrassing Homer in the process. Homer tries to improve his family's behavior at dinner later that evening, but to no avail. So what's the next option on his list? Shock therapy, of course. This is a classic Simpsons moment that even the most casual fans are likely to recall, and there's no question that watching the family zap each other at any given moment is hilarious. But the implications behind the scene are disturbing to say the least. In order to get on the good side of his boss, Homer is willing to put not only his kids through his shocking ordeal, he puts Marge through it as well. The fact that he does it against his entire family's wishes makes it even more off-putting. Even little Maggie is forced into the contraption. That Homer would willingly subject his wife to this kind of scenario instead of trying to talk things through with her and coming up with a solution they can both agree on is an unsettling trait he demonstrates throughout the entire series time and time again. Marge can't catch a break. In every great marriage, spouses should be able to depend on one another to step up to the plate in a time of need. That is, unless we're talking about Homer and Marge's marriage. Few would argue that Homer is the glue that holds the family together. He might be the one bringing in the dough, but it's Marge who serves as the nurturer. She cooks the dinners, cleans the house, and serves as the voice of reason when Homer decides to pursue one of his inane schemes. But everyone has a breaking point, and in the season 3 episode, Homer Alone, Marge has hers. When the stress of taking care of everyone reaches a boiling point, Marge decides to take a much-needed vacation, leaving Bart and Lisa with her sisters and Maggie with Homer. It quickly becomes clear how little Homer is able to function without Marge. In fact, he becomes so lonely he neglects to take care of Maggie, who ends up running away to find Marge. The episode ends on a positive note, with a rejuvenated Marge returning home to a family more willing to help her out, but the reality is clear. Because of Homer's incompetence, Marge will rarely be able to take some time away to regain her senses. So much for finding a happy middle ground.
Bart, do that thing you do that's so cute.
What?
That thing you know how to do.
What?
Go to bed.
Homer's drinking problem. Moe's Tavern is essentially Homer's home away from home. It's where he goes to hang out with all his best buds, Moe, Barney, Carl, Lenny, and the seemingly endless cast of background characters who rarely say a word. It's possible Homer spends more time at the tavern than he does with his family, and that's where things start to get a little messed up. Time and time again, Homer has returned home from a night out at the bar drunk out of his mind, leaving Marge to deal with the consequences. In the season 2 episode, The War of the Simpsons, Homer and Marge throw a house party for their friends and neighbors, and Homer proceeds to drink himself into oblivion. The next day, Marge signs them up for couples therapy, where Homer proceeds to slack off and go fishing instead of attending the workshops. While it all works out in the end, as it normally does, Moe's Tavern continues to be a regular staple of Homer's life, reinforcing the notion that despite Marge's attempts to quell it, his raging alcoholism won't ever come in check. Because we all know a marriage's strong foundations are built on a river of booze.
Remember the cinnamon? And the answer will surprise you. The results were...
When did you get that put in?
Disapproving fathers. We all long for the approval of our parents, some more than others. For many, a thumbs up from a father figure can be the key to unlocking the confidence needed to achieve a goal. But when that same thumb turns downward, it can spell disaster. When choosing the person we want to spend the rest of our lives with, a parent's approval is obligatory. It was for Homer and Marge too, only it turns out neither of their fathers approved of the relationship, and that was the case right from the start. In the season 2 episode, The Way We Was, Marge and Homer tell their kids the story of how they met back in high school in the mid-70s. They were both in detention, Homer for smoking and Marge for participating in a feminist rally, and it was love at first sight. But right off the bat, Homer's father tells Homer he's wasting his time, that he's liable to screw it up somehow. When Homer goes to Marge's house to pick her up for prom, her dad, Clancy Bouvier, shows visible relief when the nerdy Artie Ziff shows up to take her instead. It's possible both Abe and Clancy knew something Marge and Homer didn't and were trying to protect them from years of turmoil down the road.
Hey, guys. What's the secret knock again?
Marge enables Homer. Even if you take away nothing else from this video, be sure to take away this. Marge Simpson is a saint. Just think of all she has to put up with. She's devoted her life to taking care of a consistently neglectful and insensitive husband and their 3 kids, one of whom could very well be the spawn of Satan himself. That would be Bart if for some reason you didn't pick up on that. She's intelligent, caring, nurturing, and supportive. In many ways, she could be considered an ideal partner. But despite all these positive attributes, she possesses a major flaw. She enables Homer's bad behavior and keeps letting him get away with everything. She's quick to condemn him, of course, but how often does she actually put forth an effort to stop him? More often than not, she ends up behaving in a passive manner, allowing Homer to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. At times, Marge will put her foot down, causing Homer to feel terrible and regretful for his actions, but it doesn't happen nearly often enough. The fact that she continues to stick with Homer despite some of the terrible things he's done only serves to reinforce his belief that he can get away with anything without causing permanent damage to the marriage.
Homer, listen to me. There's just so much I can take.
No, we can save this. We'll go to a therapist.
We're at a therapist.
How you doing?
Divorce. Homer and Marge are considered by many to be a shining beacon of matrimony for married couples everywhere. They've served as an inspiring example of how to navigate marital hardships and emerge on the other side relatively, keyword relatively, unscathed. After all, if they can make it through all these years and incidents without splitting up, maybe there's hope for all of us, right? Except here's the thing. Homer and Marge did split up. Not only that, they've gotten divorced more than once. And not just the official divorce that took place in the season 27 episode, Every Man's Dream. Brace yourself, fans. Turns out Homer and Marge may have actually been divorced from season 8 to season 20. That's 12 whole seasons.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
How did this happen? In the season 8 episode, A Millhouse Divided, Homer decides to get a divorce from Marge so they can get remarried in the company of friends and family. But in season 20, it's revealed that the officiator of their remarriage, Reverend Lovejoy, had a lapsed ministerial certification, rendering the ceremony inept. If that's the case, then Homer's romantic gesture was all for naught, and he and Marge have spent nearly as many seasons legally separated as they have married. What is this madness?
Yeah, I'm looking for Homer Simpson.
Oh, it's the woman I married in Vegas. Homer, you're a bad man.
Keeping secrets. More often than not, Homer has a tendency to choose the road more foolish, where a more sensible individual would go the more logical and intelligent route. Homer's bad decisions and behavior have, at times, gotten so horrendous that Homer has actively sought to keep Marge from finding out about them, encouraging a marriage based on lies and deception. One such example occurred in the classic season 10 episode, Viva Ned Flanders. In it, Ned gets the urge to live a little and seeks out Homer as a guide. The two embark on a road trip to Las Vegas where Flanders ends up getting drunk on wine spritzers. When they awake the next morning, they discover they've married a couple of cocktail waitresses. While Homer and Ned manage to escape their new wives, Homer gives no indication that he'll share the news with Marge. Homer actually manages to keep this a secret until his Vegas wife shows up on his doorstep a few seasons later. The fact that Homer got married and ran off without getting an official divorce is bad enough, but it's worse that he didn't even tell Marge about it until he had no other choice but to come clean. Although, if we consider the previous point we made that he was no longer married to Marge, maybe it wasn't so bad. Framing Marge. While we're all aware of Homer's drinking problems, what may come as more of a surprise is that Marge has dealt with her own fair share of alcohol struggles. Instead of understanding her problem and using his own experiences to help her overcome her demons and strengthen their marriage, Homer exploits Marge to get himself out of a hairy situation. The incident in question took place in the season 15 episode, Codependence Day. The Simpsons decide to take a trip to California so Bart and Lisa can pay a visit to Cosmic Wars creator Randall Curtis and criticize the movie adaptations of his comics. comics. Homer and Marge, meanwhile, decide to visit a number of wineries and both get drunk off the numerous free samples. After Marge suffers a painful hangover, she tells Homer they need to stop. At first, he agrees, but when they go to an Oktoberfest, Homer actually pressures her to start drinking again. When they try to drive home, Homer ends up flipping the car. When the police arrive, Homer frames the whole thing on his wife, who was too drunk to defend herself, and she gets arrested. Even by Homer's lower-than-low standards, this is a repulsive move, and further indication he'll do anything he can to avoid taking responsibility, even if it means throwing his wife under the proverbial bus.
You little, I'll teach you to laugh at something that's funny!
Homer's abusive nature. For years, Homer has behaved like a total buffoon. In any given situation, he has a reputation for screwing things up or actively making things worse. Nearly all his schemes have ended up causing trouble not only for him, but his entire family. Marge is there to offer a word of warning and solemn advice intended to be taken to heart, but Homer never listens. He just plows on ahead the way he always does. And time after time, Homer proves disingenuous and inconsiderate. In the episode, Bart gets hit by a car. Marge's honesty costs the family a fortune, and Homer actually tells her he no longer loves her. In A Streetcar Named Marge, he actively discourages her newfound love of stage acting. He strangles Bart on the regular, he blows all their money on stupid things, and when he buys a gun in the Cartridge family, he shows little interest in using it responsibly. Marge manages to get it away from him, but ends up keeping it. Perhaps it's for her own protection. Though it may be tough to admit it, the truth of the matter is Homer is downright abusive at times, and Marge is typically the one bearing the brunt of his bad behavior along with all the stress that it causes. Nothing ever changes. And what's the most disturbing secret of them all? The fact that nothing ever seems to change. Over the course of 20+ seasons and 600+ episodes, Homer and Marge always revert to their bad behavior, whether it's outright conniving and misbehaving or subtle manipulation and reinforcing. Despite all the problems, despite all the therapy sessions, there doesn't seem to be any indication that they'll ever change. In fact, at one point, Homer even uses his lack of ability to change as a selling point for why Marge should stay with him. In the season 5 episode, Secrets of a Successful Marriage, Homer ends up teaching a class on, you guessed it, the secrets of having a successful marriage. Homer ends up regaling his class with personal tales of his and Marge's marriage. Marge is understandably furious when she finds out and kicks him out of the house. When Homer comes back to her near the episode's conclusion, he joyfully declares that he can offer something that no one else can: complete and utter dependence. Marge recognizes that this isn't a positive, but still agrees to take him back. Because despite all the trials and tribulations, Homer and Marge will always end up together. It's why we love them so much. It's also why they'll never improve. And that's just the reality of a long-running TV series. So, there you have it, friends. Do you think Homer and Marge's marriage is worse than they want to let on? Is your faith in true love totally shattered? Let us know in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos. Thanks for watching.